Hey everybody, it's PJ from the Wisconsin AirGunners. Earlier this year, one of our teammates got a hold of the newly released Huma Moderator. He intended to put it on his crown, and we thought this would be a great opportunity to test it out against our favorite, the DonnyFL Sumo. So one beautiful late summer afternoon, we set out to test the two moderators. We set up the crown, we set up the sound meter, we set out targets, we did test shots, and then we made our comparison. But before we tell you what the results were, we have to admit there was one fatal flaw in our testing. We were testing a 30 caliber Huma moderator against a 25 caliber DonnyFL Sumo, and we were testing it with a 25 caliber rifle. When we shot without the moderator, our results were consistent, right around 103 decibels. When we shot with either the Sumo or the Huma, the results were pretty similar. The Huma did have just an edge, usually within a half decibel. Getting accurate sound readings using a meter like this is not as easy as it seems. And my advice is whenever you see readings like this in a video, take the results with a grain of salt. I think they're good for in-the-moment comparisons, one thing versus another, but I would not take our numbers, or anybody else's for that matter, and assume that you have an absolute reading that will be useful for you to compare from one video to another, or even from one day's testing to another day's testing. We just haven't seen them to be that consistent. In this case, the Huma had a clear, although very slight, advantage. The average noise put out by the DonnyFL was under 1 decibel louder than the Huma. When it came to accuracy, we saw a different story. For this test, we shot 5-shot groups. The Donny's was not only tighter, but the POI was higher. But we really weren't comparing apples to apples, were we? Remember, this is a 25 caliber rifle, and we're shooting a 25 caliber Sumo and a 30 caliber Huma. So back to the drawing board and on to round 2 of testing. After acquiring a 30 caliber Sumo, we sat down for another round of testing. Our plan to test included 3 phases. The first was sound, the second was accuracy, and then third, sort of a late addition to the testing plan, was to check velocity. We added a new twist to our sound test using the iPhone 7 and an external mic and the government-developed sound level meter, which actually worked pretty well. In fact, this gave us much more consistent and reliable readings than our standalone meter. But you aren't watching our video to hear about our equipment. You want to know the numbers. The noise reading for the unmoderated crown was about 105 decibels. We shot it several times and the reading was fairly consistent. Then we switched over to the Huma and got a reading of 95.9 decibels. Again, a consistent reading over multiple shots. Then we set up the DonnyFL Sumo, and we got readings in the 96.3 decibel range. 0.4 decibels isn't a lot, but the Huma was the consistent winner in this round of testing. For the next part of the testing, we set up a 50-yard target. Our goal here was to simulate what a new owner putting one of these moderators on their rifle would experience. The rifle we're using, an FX Crown, had just been sent out and then returned from repair. It was set up in 25 caliber, and then after it was returned, we switched it over to 30 caliber. This is Noah's competition rifle, and he usually shoots with the shroud retracted. It's quite loud in 30 caliber. For testing, as a reminder, the shroud is extended, and that's mostly just to make nice with the neighbors of the backyard range. I will say this, those 30 caliber pellets hit with some authority. Just remember, this rifle has not been tuned for this caliber or this pellet. We're just shooting it as though it came stock out of the box. This next clip is the FX Crown in 30 caliber with the Huma Moderator attached. For reference, the point of aim for all of these shots is the center of the bullseye. The test rifle was aired to 220 bar in between each round of shooting. The test pellets used were 44 grain JSBs. As with all our pellet and rifle testing, shots are taken in one group, and no groups are refilmed during testing. The final 10-shot group is the FX Crown in 30 caliber with the DonnyFL Sumo moderator. all pellets were unsorted and unlubed and taken straight from the tin. Velocity in this testing was at about 770 feet per second. So here are your results. The group size with the shroud extended is 1.164 inches. The group size with the Huma Moderator is 1.527 inches. And finally, the group size with the Sumo is 1.365 inches. Neither of these groups are worth writing home about, but they show the importance of tuning a rifle to a particular pellet at a particular speed with the particular accessories you're going to shoot with installed at the time of the tuning. Remember that this crown came back to us after being repaired, set up in .25 caliber. All we did was change the barrel and the probe and started shooting. Certainly there's room for additional testing to be done, but that's not the focus of this video. As it stands, our accuracy winner is the DonnyFL Sumo. Remember, we've seen results like this before. With a slight edge in noise reduction going to the Huma and a slight increase in accuracy going to the DonnyFL. The last part of our testing was to check velocity as measured by the FX chronograph. If you're using a radar-based chronograph, it's super important to maintain consistent shot-to-shot placement of the radar unit relative to the barrel. In this test, we used this mounting bracket, which works really well. There's also a bracket coming from FX that current owners can actually get by just paying shipping, which is pretty cool, but that's a totally separate issue. We shot 3 5-shot groups. First, we shot the FX crown with the shroud extended. Then we shot the FX crown with the shroud retracted and the DonnyFL moderator on. And then lastly, we shot the FX crown, shroud retracted, and the Huma moderator in place. So our first group, using only the shroud, had an average of 771 feet per second and a standard deviation of 8.2. Remember, these are pellets right out of the tin, and this rifle has not been tuned for this caliber or these pellets. Our second group of 5 shots with the DonnyFL Sumo had an average speed of 779 feet per second, or 8 feet per second higher, an equal spread of 23, but a slightly higher standard deviation of 11.3. The third group, using the Huma Moderator, is where things got interesting. Here we saw an average speed of only 759 feet per second and an incredible spread of 70 feet per second with a standard deviation of 26.3 feet per second. Take a look at the 5 shots. 747, 765, 770, 791, 721. Between each string, we refilled the gun, so this isn't a case of the gun being overfilled or falling off the regulator. To say that we were surprised by the result is an understatement, and we actually redid the test twice with separate 5-shot groups, and of those retests, this one was the most favorable. One of them, the spread was over 90 feet per second. It's easy to ask what's going on to cause this level of velocity instability. We think we know the answer. Inside the DonnyFL is a series of baffles that also act as air strippers, moving excess air away from the pellet. The material doing the work inside the Huma is a metal mesh and sound deadening material. It's not intentionally pulling any of the excess air away from the path of the pellet, and what we think is happening is that some of that excess air is coming back at the pellet in the form of back pressure, and that's what's causing the variations in velocity. Which brings us back to the original question of which moderator is the better choice, the Huma or the DonnyFL. As far as the sound test goes, the Huma had a slight edge by 0.4 decibels. In the accuracy column, the DonnyFL was more accurate, and we expect more out of the accuracy once it's tuned for the caliber as well as the moderator. The velocity testing is where things got interesting. The Sumo actually increased velocity while keeping the spread the same. The Huma, on the other hand, introduced an unacceptable variance in the velocity. That's just something we can't have in something we're using for either pest control or competition. So here's your winner, the DonnyFL Sumo. Nearly as quiet as the Huma, more accurate, and actually adds FPS in our test rifle. So what do we do with this Huma moderator? At Wisconsin AirGunners, we really do two things. One is shoot pests. Shooting pests requires an accurate gun that is consistent from shot to shot. We also shoot competitions, something that also requires shot-to-shot consistency. The only thing we could really do with this moderator is give it to somebody we're competing against, and I don't know that we'd get anybody to use it, especially after they see this video. There you have it. 7 shots from a .25 caliber FX Crown shooting 33.95 grain JSB pellets. Looking at it deconstructed, I wonder if some of the velocity issues are related to the multi-chamber design. But I think I'm going to let somebody else figure that part out. Thanks for watching. As always, if you liked the video, give us a thumbs up, and we hope you'll consider subscribing. Have a great weekend, and shoot safe.